The shouting started before the gate was fully open. Neighbors leaned out of windows. A generator somewhere nearby coughed and went silent. In the narrow Lagos compound, voices crashed into each other like metal plates. "You followed him here?" a woman screamed. Another voice, sharper, answered back, "I didn't steal anything that wasn't already given." A phone hit the ground and cracked. Children cried. In the middle of the chaos stood Morenike, barefoot on hot concrete, her wrapper half-tied, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. This was not how a marriage was supposed to end. Not like this. Not with strangers watching and whispering her name. Not with her husband standing behind another woman, saying nothing. Just 1 hour earlier, life had still looked normal. The kind of normal you don't question until it disappears. Morenike had been in the kitchen, stirring egusi soup, the familiar smell of crayfish and pepper filling the room. Her youngest child sat on the floor doing homework, humming off-key. Kunal had called to say he was stuck in traffic. "I'll be late," he said. She sighed but said nothing. Late had become his new normal. Still, she set his food aside, because that was what wives did. She believed patience was love wearing work clothes. Then her neighbor knocked. Hard. Too hard. "Morenike," she whispered urgently, "I think you should come outside." The tone alone told her something was wrong. By the time Morenike stepped into the compound, the shouting had already started. A woman she had never seen before was standing near Kunal's car, her handbag clutched to her chest, her eyes blazing. Kunal stood beside her, stiff, trapped between fear and shame. That was when Morenike understood. Not slowly. Not gently. All at once. Like cold water thrown on bare skin. Chaos has a way of pulling buried memories to the surface. As Morenike stood there, she remembered the first time Kunal came into her life. 15 years earlier, at a friend's engagement party in Ibadan, he had offered her malt when she said she didn't drink alcohol. "I pay attention," he'd said with a smile. That line stayed with her. He used to walk her home. Used to call her mother Ma with respect. Used to pray with her on Sunday mornings, his voice calm, steady. When he proposed, he promised her peace. "I won't be rich overnight," he said, "but I will be steady." And for a long time, he was. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. They argued about money, about his mother visiting too often, about Morenike's habit of keeping everything bottled up. But they laughed too. They shared late-night bread and tea during power outages. They raised children who believed their father was a hero. When Kunal lost his first job during an office downsizing, Morenike didn't complain. She sold her jewelry to help them stay afloat. "We'll rebuild," she told him. He kissed her forehead and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Things changed slowly, the way dangerous things often do. Kunal got a new job in a logistics firm in Lagos. Longer hours. New colleagues. New pressure. He stopped coming home for lunch. Then he stopped asking about Morenike's day. When she spoke, he nodded but didn't listen. His phone never left his hand. If she asked who he was chatting with, he laughed it off. "Office matters," he said. She wanted to believe him. In her world, trust was not something you rationed. Saad entered Kunal's life during that season. She was not loud. Not flashy. She didn't look like trouble. Recently divorced, struggling to balance work and loneliness, she sat 2 desks away from Kunal at the office. They bonded over stress. Over complaints about transport fares and rent. Over the quiet shame of feeling like life wasn't turning out as planned. Kunal listened. That alone made him dangerous. He told her about his early days with Morenike, careful to sound tired, not guilty. Saad told him about sleeping alone in a one-room apartment, about eating dinner in silence. Sometimes, she said once, laughing sadly, I talked to myself just to hear a voice. At first, it felt harmless. Shared jokes. Shared lunches. A ride home when it rained. Kunal told himself he deserved understanding. Saad told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. Nobody said the word affair out loud. They didn't have to. The line crossed itself one evening when Kunal didn't go home after work. His phone battery died, or so he claimed later. That night, Morenike sat awake until 2 a.m., listening to every sound from the street. When he finally returned, smelling unfamiliar, he said, I slept at the office. She nodded. Something in her chest tightened, but she swallowed it. A good wife doesn't accuse without proof, she told herself. The proof came in pieces. A receipt for a restaurant she'd never heard of. A strange perfume on his shirt. And finally, the message. The night the power went out and Morenike used Kunal's phone as a torch, the screen lit up with a notification. I feel safe with you. That was all it said. No emojis. No explanation. Just that sentence, sitting there like a verdict. Her hand shook as she read it again. Safe. That word hurt more than I love you ever could. She didn't confront him immediately. She waited. Observed. Watched how he smiled at his phone and how his smile faded when he looked at her. When she finally asked him, her voice was calm. Too calm. Who is Saad? Kunal froze. That was when Morenike knew the truth was heavier than she imagined. He sat down and said quietly, I didn't plan this. As if plans were the problem. As if betrayal only counted when scheduled. Now, standing in the compound, with neighbors watching and children crying, the past and present collided. Sada's voice was shaking but defiant. He told me he was unhappy, she said. He told me you didn't understand him. Morenike felt something tear inside her. Not because of the insult, but because Kunal didn't correct it. He just stood there, silent. That silence was louder than any shout. That was the moment Morenike realized she had already lost him long before today. Someone pulled Morenike aside. Someone else dragged Saad away. The crowd slowly dispersed, disappointed there was no physical fight. Kunal followed Morenike into the house, his shoulders slumped. I never wanted this kind of scene, he said. She laughed then. A short, broken sound. You wanted secrecy, she replied. This is what happens when secrecy runs out. That night, Morenike didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to Kunal breathe beside her, wondering how a man could feel like a stranger so suddenly. Her children slept in the next room, unaware that their lives were already changing. In the dark, Morenike asked herself questions she had never imagined asking. Where did I go wrong? Was love ever enough? If another woman could take my place so easily, what did that say about me? Outside, Lagos moved on. Cars honked. Generators roared back to life. But inside that small flat, something had ended. Part 1 of this story closes here, at the edge of truth, where chaos strips away comfort and forces a woman to face a future she never planned. And as you listen to this, ask yourself honestly, if you were standing barefoot in that compound, watching your life unravel in public, what would you do next? The house felt hollow the morning after the confrontation, like sound itself refused to settle. Morenike woke up before dawn, not because she was rested, but because sleep would no longer come when she needed it. The ceiling fan creaked above her, pushing warm air around the room without relief. Connell's side of the bed was still warm, but he was already up, sitting in the living room with his head in his hands. No words passed between them at first. Silence had become their new language. By 7 a.m., the children were awake, asking for breakfast, asking why their father didn't greet them with his usual smile. Morenike moved through the kitchen on instinct, frying eggs she barely tasted, tying her wrapper tighter than necessary. Connell watched her, opening his mouth several times, then closing it again. Finally, as the children left for school, he spoke. "We need to talk," he said. Morenike didn't look at him. "You already talked," she replied quietly. "You just used someone else's mouth." They sat across from each other like strangers waiting for a bus that might never come. Connell explained, slowly, carefully, as if choosing the right words could undo the damage. He said he felt invisible at home. He said work stress made him feel like a failure. He said Sod listened without judging. Morenike nodded, absorbing every word, even when they cut. "So you punished me for believing in you?" she asked. Connell flinched. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he repeated. Morenike finally met his eyes. "But it happened," she said. "And now we have to live with it." The days that followed were heavy. Connell stopped pretending. Sod began calling openly. She showed up once, standing awkwardly by the gate, eyes lowered, saying she wanted to clear the air. Morenike didn't shout. She simply said, "You've cleared enough." 2 weeks later, Connell moved out. No dramatic goodbye. Just 2 suitcases and a promise to still support the children. Morenike watched him leave, her chest tight, her hands steady only because they had to be. 3 months later, Connell married Sod quietly. No big ceremony. No loud celebration. Word still spread. In Lagos, news travels faster than honesty. People whispered at church. Some blamed Morenike. Maybe she wasn't submissive enough. Others shook their heads in sympathy. Morenike learned how to walk through judgment without responding. At night, she cried into her pillow, careful not to wake the children. During the day, she smiled for them. Survival became a routine. For Sod, the beginning felt like relief. She moved into Connell's house and tried to make it a home. She rearranged the furniture. Changed the curtains. Cooked new recipes, hoping to erase the taste of another woman's life. Connell smiled for visitors, but at night, he was distant. He worried about money more than before. His salary wasn't stretching as far as it used to. Responsibilities felt heavier now that they were no longer shared with patients. Small cracks began to show. Connell snapped easily. He complained about the children's school fees. About fuel prices. About how nothing ever went as planned. Sod listened, just as she always had, but now listening came with responsibility. One evening, she asked gently, "Do you regret it?" Connell didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. "Regret doesn't change anything," he said. That answer stayed with her. 6 months into the marriage, Connell collapsed on his way home from work. It was early evening. Traffic was thick. The air smelled of exhaust and dust. Witnesses said he held his chest, staggered, and fell. By the time help arrived, he was unconscious. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly, voices urgent, machines beeping steadily. Sod arrived breathless, her headscarf slipping as she ran down the corridor. "He was fine this morning," she kept saying, as if repeating it could reverse time. Connell died 2 days later. A stroke, they said. Sudden. No warning signs anyone took seriously. Sod sat beside his body, numb, her fingers cold against his skin. The man she fought to have was gone, just like that. There was no moment for apologies. No chance to ask the questions that now burned her chest. The burial was tense. Connell's family barely acknowledged Sod. Some refused to greet her. Others greeted her with eyes full of accusation. Morenike stood at the back with her children, dressed in black, her face calm but drained. When her youngest asked, "Why is Daddy sleeping?" she held him tightly and said, "He's resting." Tears fell anyway. After the burial, reality arrived without mercy. Connell's debts surfaced. Loans he never mentioned. Credit he took hoping things would improve. The house was not fully paid for. The car belonged to the bank. The promises he made could no longer be kept. Sod faced everything alone. Friends who once congratulated her stopped calling. Some avoided her completely. Whispers followed her wherever she went. "That's her," people said softly. "The one who took another woman's husband." 3 months later, the landlord gave notice. The house was to be sold. Sod packed slowly, the same way Morenike once had, folding clothes with shaking hands. Each item felt heavier now that there was no future attached to it. She moved back to her mother's place, a single room that smelled of old furniture and disappointment. At night, she lay awake listening to neighbors argue, children cry, radios play late into the night. This was not the life she imagined. Meanwhile, Morenike was rebuilding quietly. She started cooking for neighbors, small trays of food delivered on foot. She woke up before dawn, grinding pepper, boiling rice, the smell of effort filling her kitchen. It wasn't easy. Some days she felt anger rise unexpectedly. Other days, she felt nothing at all. But her children ate. They laughed again. That was enough. 2 women. 1 man. 3 broken paths. As you listen to this part of the story, ask yourself honestly, when something you fought for finally becomes yours, what happens if it cannot carry the weight of your expectations? And when life strips everything away, who do you become after the applause fades? Time does not heal the way people promise it will. It doesn't erase pain or replace what was lost. What it does is force movement. Whether you are ready or not, days keep passing, and you must learn how to stand inside them. 2 years after Connell's death, Morenike understood this truth deeply. Her mornings began before sunrise, when Lagos was still half asleep and the air felt almost gentle. She would tie her apron, rinse rice under running water, and let her mind go quiet while her hands worked. Cooking had become more than survival. It was control. It was proof that something steady could still come from her. The children adjusted in ways that surprised her. They stopped asking when their father would return. They started asking practical questions instead. Do we have enough fuel? Can I still go on the school trip? Their grief changed shape, becoming quieter, tucked into corners of their lives. Morenike carried her own grief carefully, like a bowl filled to the brim. Some days it spilled over. Most days, she managed to keep walking. Sada's life moved in a different direction, but not an easier one. After months of living with her mother, she found a clerical job in another state. It paid little, but it paid consistently. She rented a small room close to work, just enough space for a mattress, a plastic chair, and a suitcase that still smelled faintly of Connell's cologne. At night, when the noise outside finally settled, regret came easily. Not loud regret. Quiet regret. The kind that asks questions without answers. If I had waited. If I had walked away. If I had believed loneliness could pass. One rainy afternoon, fate arranged a meeting neither woman expected. Morenike had taken a bus to deliver a large food order across town. Traffic stalled under heavy rain, the sky darkening earlier than planned. Passengers stepped down, hoping to catch another bus or simply breathe. At the bus stop, Morenike noticed a familiar posture before she recognized the face. Saad stood there, thinner, shoulders slumped, holding a nylon bag close to her chest. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain filled the silence for them. Saad was the first to break it. "I didn't think I'd see you again," she said softly. Morenike studied her, noticing the tired eyes, the absence of pride that once clung to her like perfume. "Neither did I," Morenike replied. There was no anger left to summon. Only curiosity and a strange calm. They stood side by side as rain soaked their clothes. People rushed past them, but neither moved. Finally, Saad spoke again. "I thought love would save me," she said, staring straight ahead. Morenike nodded slowly. "I thought marriage would protect me," she replied. The honesty between them felt heavier than any argument they could have had. Saad apologized then. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just a simple sentence. "I'm sorry for what I took from you." Morenike inhaled deeply. Forgiveness did not arrive instantly. But something else did. Release. "Life already collected its debt," Morenike said quietly. "Holding on won't bring anything back." They parted shortly after, each boarding different buses, carrying the weight of that brief encounter with them. For Saad, it marked a turning point. She stopped telling herself stories about fate and destiny. She focused on work. On small routines. On rebuilding trust in herself. She learned to sit with loneliness without trying to escape it through someone else's life. For Morenike, that meeting confirmed something she had been slowly discovering. Survival didn't require bitterness. It required clarity. She expanded her food business, saving little by little. 6 months later, she rented a small shop space near a busy road. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Customers began to recognize her. "Your food tastes like home," one woman told her. Morenike smiled, holding back tears. Years later, life settled into something quieter for both women. Not perfect. Not painless. Just honest. Saad relocated again for better work, careful now about the boundaries she set. Morenike's children grew taller, their laughter filling spaces once occupied by fear. Kunnel remained a memory, complicated and unresolved, but no longer central to their lives. This story doesn't end with punishment or reward. It ends with understanding. That taking what belongs to someone else often comes with hidden costs. That being wrong does not mean your life is over. And that choices echo longer than we expect. As you sit with this story, ask yourself, if you were Saad, would you have believed the risk was worth it? If you were Morenike, would you have found the strength to rebuild without revenge? And if you were given a moment to choose differently, would you listen to the quiet warnings before chaos arrives? Some lessons are learned through loss. Others through endurance. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not what you gain, but what you survive with your humanity intact.